This is the EVERCROSS EK6, and after spending a few weeks riding it for errands, casual rides, and a couple of rougher paths, I have a pretty clear sense of who it is for. It sits in that category of folding, fat-tire electric bikes that try to balance comfort, stability, and everyday usefulness. If you want something you can ride to work, take on weekend paths, or use for quick grocery runs, and you like the idea of a bike that feels planted and confident under you, this one makes a lot of sense. If you live in a walk-up apartment and you have to carry a bike upstairs every day, the weight is going to be a real factor, and I would think twice. The first thing I noticed in daily use is that it has a bold, sturdy look. The fat tires give it that tough stance, but more importantly, they change how the bike behaves on real surfaces. Cracked pavement, broken sidewalks, loose gravel, even sandy patches on a trail. The bike stays composed in a way that a normal tire bike just does not. Mine is the matte black color, and it looks clean without being flashy. The paint feels durable so far, and I appreciate the little things like the cable routing not looking like a mess. It sounds minor, but when you are living with a bike, those details add to the feeling that it was put together with care. The folding frame is something I actually used, not just a feature I read about. I folded it to fit in my car for a ride to a park trail, and once you do it a couple of times, it becomes a routine. It is not the kind of fold where you do it in 2 seconds with one hand, and the bike is still heavy even when it is folded, so you are not going to want to carry it far. But for storage in a garage corner or getting it into a trunk, it is practical. I also like being able to remove the battery to charge it inside. Some days I left the bike parked and just brought the battery in, and that convenience matters more than you would think. Setup was pretty painless. It came mostly assembled, so I was not spending my whole afternoon building a bike from scratch. I still took my time with it, because with electric bikes I always want to check bolts and alignment. I attached the main pieces, then I made small adjustments after my first ride. The brakes and the shifting were close out of the box, but not perfect. It was not hard to dial in, but I want to be honest about that, because some people expect everything to be flawless the second it comes out of the box. On the road, it feels confident and stable. The motor assist comes in smoothly, and it does not feel jerky when it kicks on. When I want to take it easy, I can keep it calm and cruise. When I want help getting up a hill, it actually gives me meaningful support. There is also a throttle, which I used more than I expected in stop-and-go situations, like crossing an intersection or starting on an incline. The bike has enough power to make hills feel doable without forcing me to stand up and grind. The top speed is around 20 miles per hour, and that is plenty for what this bike is designed to do. I never felt like I needed it to be faster. I cared more about how steady it felt getting up to speed and how predictable it was when I backed off. Comfort is a big part of the experience here. Between the fat tires and the front suspension, the bike takes the sting out of rough pavement. I also noticed the seat is wider and more cushioned than what you get on many bikes, and that made longer rides more realistic for me. I did a few rides that were long enough that I would normally start thinking about heading back early, and on this bike, I stayed out longer because I simply felt better. The riding position is relaxed, and that helps if you are using it for commuting or casual exploring rather than training. Range is always the part I am skeptical about with electric bikes, because real range depends on everything. Your weight, the wind, the temperature, how many stops you make, how many hills you climb, and how much you rely on the motor. The company talks about a range that can vary a lot, and in my own riding I landed more in the middle. With mixed terrain and a mix of pedal assist and throttle, I was getting around 45 miles on a charge. If I rode harder, used more throttle and pushed the speed, I could watch the battery drop faster. If I kept it mellow and pedaled more, it stretched further. That is exactly what I want to see, because it means the battery behavior feels honest and predictable. Charging is convenient, but it is not the fastest thing in the world. When the battery is low, it takes a while to get back to full. For me, it was fine because I charged overnight, but if you are the type of rider who wants to drain it in the morning and fully recharge in a short window, you will need patience, or you will need to plan ahead. The display is simple and readable, which is what I prefer. I want to glance down and see speed, battery, and distance without thinking about it. In bright daylight, I could still read it easily. The built-in lights also ended up being more useful than I expected. I rode early in the morning a few times, and having lights already integrated meant I did not have to mess with separate clip-on lights or worry that I forgot to charge them. The rear light acting like a brake light is a thoughtful touch, especially if you are riding around cars. One of my favorite practical features is the rear rack. I used it for a small bag on an errand run, and it turned the bike into something I could actually use instead of just ride for fun. With fat tire bikes, people sometimes focus only on the rugged look, but small daily conveniences are what decide whether you keep using it week after week. I also pushed it onto a few surfaces that usually expose weaknesses. Loose gravel was stable and predictable. Packed dirt felt smooth, and I did not feel like the bike was skating around under me. On rough patches, the suspension and tires helped a lot, but it is still a bike, so you feel bigger hits. I would call it light off-road capable, not a substitute for a dedicated mountain bike. The confidence comes from traction and stability, not from being able to bomb down technical trails. Now, the biggest downside in my day-to-day life was the weight. You feel it when you move it around by hand, especially when it is folded. Riding it is fine, but lifting it is another story. If you plan to store it in a tight space or you need to lift it regularly, that is going to be the make or break detail. The other small thing is that you may need to do some minor tuning after a few rides, like checking brake feel and making sure everything stays aligned. That is not unusual, but I always like to mention it because it is part of real ownership. So here is where I land after living with it. This is the EVERCROSS EK6, and I think it is a strong fit for riders who want a stable, comfortable electric bike that can handle imperfect roads, mixed paths, and daily errands without feeling fragile. It is for someone who values confidence and practicality, and who is okay with the trade-off of extra weight for that sturdy feel and battery size. If you need something ultralight or you have to carry it upstairs every day, I would look at other options. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with your questions or your own experience with this bike. Thank you for watching.